First day in the mission field. I arrived after a very long bus trip to a warm surprise of two members picking us up from the bus station, driving us across town, and offering us a pizza. And that was only the beginning of our experiences with that particular couple. They did a lot to make sure that we felt welcome and were attended to in every aspect of our lives. As a missionary, I learned to really understand why the brethren emphasize member missionary work, because they love the missionaries. You're most certainly their best of friends, most literally. And as far as adapting, it made life a lot easier. So I wasn't ever concerned about being well fed or feeling like I was at home, because missionaries were family. Florianopolis is an island just off the coast of Santa Catarina, which is a state in the south of Brazil. It is known for some of the most remarkable beaches in the world. Literally, there will be people from all over the world that visit the beaches there. This can mean a lot of different things for missionaries. A lot of different cultures, a lot of different experiences in that kind of an environment. As far as the state goes, the mission of Florianopolis covers all of the state of Santa Catarina, including one city in Rio Grande do Sul and 3 cities in Paraná. It's a pretty big mission, and a lot of the mission is in the exterior parts of the state is pretty rural. A lot of farms, a lot of people that grow crops for their living. You'll see that there. Pretty interesting facts about Santa Catarina. The banana capital of the world is there. The second biggest, or the biggest Oktoberfest outside of Germany is in Santa Catarina as well. Other interesting facts. The church began in Santa Catarina in Brazil. So the first branch was set up in a little place called, I can't remember the name. It's in the center of the state. And the first baptism took place in Joinville. So there are some pretty interesting consequences as a result of that. The church is very old there, but it's also a little bit hard because there's a lot of German influence and a lot of Lutheran and Catholic religious values that make it hard for people to open their minds to new religious ideas. Other interesting things about Santa Catarina, there's a lot of Italian influence in the west side of the state. So you'll see that in different places in the state, there are a lot of different cultures. You can be in one transfer, have one type of people with one type of religion predominant, and then be transferred and have a completely different experience, all on the same mission. To give you an idea, I met someone that didn't come across another Portuguese speaker until he was 26. So in certain parts of the state, all they speak is German. And their ancestors are German, and they are very Catholic. And then in another part of the state, you will find a lot more of the African influence, a lot more of international influence, like Florianopolis, for example. So that's something that I really enjoyed as a missionary on my mission, because I could see there was so much to learn and so much rich culture all in one place. Alright. So other interesting things about my mission is that the climate is very diverse. There are areas that literally exceed 100 degrees, and the humidity is saturating. It's literally like a jungle there, and it's very dense, very rich in the earth. You see all types of different plants, flowers, and trees, and it's quite amazing to behold. Other parts of the states are quite different. There's also the highest point in Brazil, very nearby. And actually the very highest point in Brazil is in our mission. And it actually snows there, one of the few places in Brazil. So the people will pride themselves in that if you ever serve in that region. People would often mention about the snow that they got to experience in 1980. And that was a very cherished memory, and to them it was very cold. And it actually does get pretty cold. It doesn't get to where it snows, but because of the humidity it feels much colder than in many places that I've been in the United States. So on one end of the spectrum you have freezing cold in the mountains, and then on the other end you have paradise at the beach and scorching weather. Florianopolis, as I said earlier, is known for some of the best beaches in Brazil and in the world. On the island of Florianopolis, there are 41 beaches alone. So as you can imagine, there's a huge rush of people there during the summer. Other interesting things about the area: international surf competitions happen there. Draws a lot of attention. There's the I have to be careful not to speak in Portuguese, but there's the pine tree festivals that happen in the mountains. There are, as I said earlier, the bananas. Let's see what else. Yeah, just lots of different cultures. A lot of Afro-American, you'll see Italian, Portuguese as well. I think to come to terms with people that you meet in Brazil, it's helpful to know the culture there. I felt a little bit estranged when people asked me, for instance, what do you know about Brazil? I could tell them, well, very few things. Very seldom had I heard anybody talk about Brazil, and I think they are fascinated when someone comes along that does know something. Another thing is to remember that the people there are special, and the culture that they share is unique to them, and it's something that is very important to the way they are and the way that they should be taught as well. As a missionary, we try to help people to come unto Christ, and oftentimes they have their own way of doing that. For instance, family is very important in Brazil. They are very respectful to God, and He is overall. Very seldom would you come across someone that did not believe in God. And that connection already brings a warm spirit into your relationship when you acknowledge that. So pre-mission, I would say learn to respect the people and appreciate their culture as much as you can. School. In the south of Brazil, it is the most developed of anywhere else. The highest standard of living is in Paraná, if I'm not mistaken, and the second is in Santa Catarina. So it doesn't quite feel like the rest of Brazil in that sense. People are a lot more well off in the metropolitan areas. And they are also a little bit more inclined to dwell on the material side of their lives. So in that sense, you have to address that in your teaching. It's not quite as humble as the other parts of Brazil. Nonetheless, you will still encounter many people on the lower class, the lower end of the spectrum. So you will run into very diverse economic status within the same city. Within the center, there's a lot more richness, and then in the exterior parts of the city, you'll see a lot more of deserted houses and poor people. You run into different obstacles with both. And in that sense, I witnessed that in whatsoever standing that you are, economically, spiritually, we all have the same potential, and there is equal potential for opposition. As I was saying with school, people are a lot more likely to go to school in southern parts of Brazil because they have the money to afford that kind of schooling. You'll see lots of people that learn English as well. Not only can they go to their normal K through 12, if you will, they can also spend extra time learning English outside of that. And that was a very important aspect of our teaching. We would oftentimes use our skills as English professors to, if you will, advertise who we were. Because people love to know about Americans. And in that sense, we could offer something that allowed for them an opportunity to know the restored gospel. A lot of times, just the fact that I was an American, I had an opportunity to get to know strangers and start up a conversation. So that was a great opportunity as a missionary in southern Brazil. Mostly because they had the privilege of that kind of education. A lot of people knew about the United States and wanted to learn a little more from us. There are churches literally all through the town. You can go literally a mile and find 5 or 6 different churches, if not more. So it is different in that having a church to most people in Brazil is just like any other. And in that sense, it takes a lot of courage and a lot of boldness in speech to be clear and cut to the chase as to why our church is different than the 25 others that everyone else has known. So in that sense, you really need to know the gospel and what importance the restoration has in building our faith and coming closer to Jesus Christ. As a as a member of the church in Utah, I believed and assertively knew every aspect of the restoration to be true. As a missionary, I learned why I needed certain principles of the gospel to draw closer to the Savior. And it's very evident that without the restored gospel, there is contention and confusion. And that's often the perspective that people have. Now, to be clear on what I'm trying to say, to have faith in most people's minds, independent of religion, is sufficient to return to God. There's a certain benevolence that people feel towards religion in general. People feel that they should be respected for their religion, and that whether you are one faith or another, it's okay in God's eyes. And that is important to understand in the beginning. However, to acquire greater faith and greater love for the Savior, we have to have full understanding of His restored church. So that's kind of the religious culture that exists in Brazil. Congratulations for getting your call to the best mission in the world. Florianopolis truly is a blessed part of the country of Brazil. I have a testimony that the people there are prepared to know the restored church and receive the blessing of having the restored gospel in their homes. I have a testimony that the family is ordained of God, and that is a rich part of their culture, that people need further ordinances and privileges that the restored gospel offers. I have a testimony that the church is the Lord's institution for bringing people together and allowing for us to be instructed in the principles of the gospel. In Brazil, the church is growing. The name is growing much more it's becoming more pertinent in people's minds, and they are much more aware of who we are and what we do as disciples of Jesus Christ. As missionaries and members of the restored church, we are disciples of Jesus Christ. And I know that as disciples of Jesus Christ, we are entitled to the Lord's help. I can recall on one occasion, among many, when the Lord blessed me to know where to go in order to find someone that was needing and was prepared for greater knowledge to bless his life. I was in the middle of a town that was quite difficult for the church to grow in. And at the particular time I was serving there had been a lull experienced in the missionary work at that time. My companion and I were sent there to replace all of the previous missionaries that were serving there. And we had to start fresh on all sectors of the work. Unfortunately, our efforts were not sufficient, and we were not able to find anyone. And that's when the Lord stepped in. It was then that I learned that without the Lord's help, that we cannot do His work. One evening we stepped aside after having lost interest of all of our potential investigators. And my companion and I had felt that we needed to say a prayer. We were both very hard workers. And there's a point where our work was not enough until we asked in prayer for His guidance. We had simple ways of finding people to teach, and they weren't exactly the most sophisticated. But through the Lord's mercy, we were walking along, and my companion was asking directions. And we came across someone, the second person to be exact after that prayer we offered. And he became more interested than anyone else that we had ever come across in those 2 weeks that we had been left desolate without anybody to listen to us. He walked for over 20 minutes to show us the way to our destination with no need or no previous commitment with us. He walked, he talked, he asked every question imaginable about us as missionaries in the United States. By the end of the evening, he had every interest in learning more. That particular investigator was more prepared than just about anybody I've known. And it confirmed to me that the Lord uses means after we have shown our faith sufficiently. I know that this church is true.